Welcome to Soulfull. Whether you're navigating challenges or celebrating victories,
We're here to remind you that every step on your path is meaningful. I'm Tiff,
and I'm Jess.
so let's clear our mind as we fill our soul. Welcome back, everyone. We're here again with another episode of Soulfull. We're so excited to have you tuning in with us. And as per always, it's me here, Tiff, and I'm here with Jess. How are you, Jess?
Hey everybody. Yeah, doing good this morning. As I just shared, I had a little bit of a later night last night. So I got to yeah, so for those listening who might not know, I do some volunteer work here in my community, and last night we had a fundraiser for the organization that I sit on the board for, and yeah, it was a really cool space to be in. We have a really big local music scene here, and so this year, a bunch of local artists created a Christmas album, and so last night was like the launch party of that, and this is yeah, maybe even like a little sneak peek into the next episode, but what a space of community like there was last night, truly yeah, it just gave me a lot of energy. So it was a late night. It felt like a late night, but also yeah, it was really meaningful. So I woke up maybe like a little bit tired, but also really, yeah, just really full, I think. So yeah, feeling good. Looking forward to going into the week strong with that feeling, and yeah, we'll see what the week brings. But yeah, how about you? How are you doing?
That's awesome. I love those spaces too, where we can really feel recharged in the connection. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes well, I call myself more ambiverted. Like I'm not necessarily a full extrovert. I'm not a total introvert. So sometimes I can recharge in those community
Mm,
spaces when they are meaningful. That's the word I think you
mhm.
use, meaningful. So, yeah, I am, well, wrapping up a lot of projects in my personal life. And as Jess knows, I've spent the past week building a ghost vacuum. There's a lot more details behind that. Please feel free to comment and ask me about it. But I've been building a ghost vacuum to play a role play game with my kiddo. It's one of the ways I try to engage and connect with him. He's a very creative soul, so really, yeah, really indulge that inner child in myself so that I can really connect with him and have some fun. So I'm looking forward to him coming home from his dad's today so that he can see this surprise role play game that I've come up with. It's based off of we play some Nintendo games together, and it's based off of his current favorite one, Luigi's Mansion. So if you haven't played it, 10 out of 10 recommend. um,
A little shout out here for Luigi's Mansion. Yeah.
yeah. This was not paid. This is not a paid advertisement. No, just something I bought him the Nintendo Switch probably like 6 years ago, and it has been one of the best investments. I know a lot of people get caught up in like too much screen time for my kiddo and stuff, but for me, it kind of boils down to intention. If we're spending the time together to be really connected and enjoy something together, we're on a joint mission. Like
Mm,
it's just a very connecting thing, and he brings up appreciation for that all the time. So yeah, I'll let the judgment of screen time just roll right off my
yeah,
shoulders.
exactly. Let it go.
Let it go. Well, on that note, to tie into the ghost vacuum, something that, I do a lot of when I am in a more difficult season is a lot of creativity. It is something that helps me move. And so that brings us into today's topic. We are going to be chatting about how we move through more difficult, challenging seasons in our lives. And I know we all move through them. They look different for each of us. How we navigate them looks different for each of us, because we all have our own unique tools and ways to move through the world. But yeah, so my family, just a little background. I am a parent of such a beautiful, intelligent, and I love this term since it's kind of come on the scene, neurospicy kiddo. He keeps me on my toes. He challenges me. I have grown so much as a mother, and like learning skills on how to support and advocate. But sometimes it becomes a lot. we're not new to navigating challenging seasons in this journey, in making sure he is seen, heard, understood, and cared for in the way that he needs. But when it gets heavier, there are things that I need to do for myself and acknowledge within myself so that I can continue to progress forward with an open heart. It's easy for me to shut it all down and just navigate through, pull up my boots or whatever, and and just move through, but I become very hostile, apathetic, um not concerned, and that burns me out. So I can watch my heart center close, and it's just that to me is more painful than moving through the challenging season in like full presence. Um, and so, yeah, that's kind of where we've been in the last little bit. And I've been receiving my own coaching and stuff around this, and just making sure that I'm trying to stay checked in and balanced as well as possible. I mean, I don't think we do anything perfectly, but just with as much balance and harmony as I can. And so for me, that looks like I mentioned, being very creative kind of helps me stay a little bit more centered. Um, Making sure whether I need to schedule the time, which might sound funny, but as a parent and wearing many hats, I can't just break down all the time everywhere. But having scheduled time or unscheduled time to really allow myself to feel the depth of sometimes the despair that I might feel, or the overwhelm, or the grief, whatever might be coming up for me. As well as making sure that I'm leaning in on people that want to support and allowing them to show up for me, because my strong belief is that we're not meant to do things alone in the grand scheme. Like, we are meant to have community around us and rally around us. So yeah, with that, I'm wondering, Jess, I'm sure, I mean, like I said, I'm sure none of us are strangers to moving through more challenging seasons in our lives, but I'm wondering if, like, yeah, if you'd like to talk to that a little bit and kind of how you've learned to move through some more challenging seasons in your life.
Yeah, so yeah, like I feel like we do all have challenging seasons in our lives, right? And so I am kind of, I guess, reflecting or brought back to, I guess, one of the more challenging seasons for sure. And this season was, quite a few years ago now. But when I think about the impact, like, it's profound actually to think about the impact that season continues to have on my life now. And
Mm,
both in a building resilience kind of way, and also in the, like, wow, that really still brings up some deep rooted stuff kind of way. And so yeah, I think there will be a time where, maybe I'll share specifics of that season, but for right now, what I'd like to, I guess, talk about or share about is really how I navigated through it. And so I know we kind of like share these topics with each other before we like sit down to record. And yeah, I wasn't exactly sure how this was going to unfold. So just really honoring, I guess, and stepping into what feels right for me in this moment. Um, and so yeah, like, what I can say is I remember during that season of my time, I guess, like, or that season of my life, feeling under a lot of pressure. And I think feeling that I just really wanted it to be over. Like, I just wanted it to not be my reality, I guess, right? Like, I wanted this
mm,
season to be done with and packaged away, and I wanted to be in that moment of like, oh, that was hard, but I got through it. And I think I just felt really disconnected from myself, like from me, from myself. Um, and I sat in this season for a long time, actually, like, because first I didn't realize the toll that it was having on me, like, mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I think I've always been independent in some ways, and yeah, dependent in other ways for sure. But yeah, and I think that's rooted, to attachment and all this other stuff that I'm sure could be in another episode someday. But um, anyways, I guess with this strong sense of independence came a belief that I did have to handle things on my own, right? And so when I think about navigating through it, honestly, I don't think I did it well. like I
Mm,
don't think I did it well. I think I turned to coping in ways that harmed me further. And what I can say though is that um I guess I no longer hold on to maybe as much shame around that, right? Around that season, around how I got through it, because I do think that we navigate our life circumstances in the best way that we know how, and like at that moment, right? When
yeah.
we're doing it. And so, yeah, although it wasn't the greatest way, it was the only way that I knew how at that time. And so I remember telling or someone telling me, oh my God, probably also a really long time ago now, um, that everyone comes into our lives for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, right? And so, yeah, when I think about this season, navigating through it, didn't do too well on my own with that. But there was someone who I met during that challenging season of my life that, and we're no longer connected now. But I think the reason I did meet that person was to allow me to kind of step into some support and lean into them
Mm,
to help me get through it. I mean, I didn't really feel like that at that time, but now that I can reflect on that, I think that's what it was. So, yeah, I can say, it wasn't. I guess navigating the season wasn't immediate, and it definitely wasn't. What's the word, like linear, I guess, like it wasn't,
yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I'm not sure that entirely answers the question, but yeah, I think over time I was kind of able to maybe, yeah, connect with some support and find my balance again.
Yeah. Yeah. Support. I don't know about you, like you said so much. The reason season lifetime is something I hold for myself as well, because I'm always so grateful that, that brought up some things for me of some people that aren't in my life anymore, but what a purpose they served when they were here, and how
Mm.
beautiful that is. But I mean, I really resonate with like, oh, I didn't navigate it well per se. Yeah, I think well, I mean, by nature, it's more difficult. It's more challenging, and I think something me and my mom talked at length about this, but sometimes for me, the extra layer that I get tripped up in is like, oh, I'm a coach. What would I be telling my clients? How am I moving through? And it's like, so I feel like this extra need to be, you use the word independent, but yeah, for me, it's resilient. Like, oh, okay, I need to be able to move through this and grow through this. And what is this teaching me? And yada, yada. And I think that just disconnects me from myself. That was something you said, so that really struck me. Yeah, that disconnection from the self, and yeah, I mean that is a way to navigate through it. I mean, we do get to the other side, but there's something that I've come to really appreciate about my journey is that when I allow myself to move through it instead of around it,
Mm.
what profound healing and rebirth kind of comes from that when I get to the other side of it. And that doesn't mean I need to sit and endure all day, every day, and like be in the thick of it and not allow myself a break or, you know, because I think that's important. But that kind of leads me into another question that I've been sitting with since I met with my coach on Wednesday. And that is like resilience versus compassion and like where to strike the balance of both. It's like I can do that. I have been through many challenging seasons in my life. I can put on that. I am super extremely resilient and I've got this and I'm going to make my way through this. And I started to tip into that. And I do that by coping through overworking. I do that through playing way too much Candy Crush on my phone. I do that through disconnecting from my loved ones around me. And that hurts me. You said that too, Jess, in your thing. These strategies hurt you more than, and that really strikes me. And so I'm just wondering is how can self-compassion help those of us who are already really over resilient and may need more gentleness? Like I don't know if that strikes anything for you, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, over resilient, self-compassion. I think yeah, you know what, I'm just gonna say it. So I think like I can't make people, nor can I expect them to know what I need or to even offer me compassion, right? And
Mm,
so the hope for me is to come across people and spaces that are gentle and that can hold compassion for me. But the truth is, like, that's not my reality. It's not my experience, right? I don't believe that this is always going to be the case. And so I can absolutely choose to, step away from places or set boundaries with people who might not be, holding compassion for me. But it still doesn't mean I'm not going to experience it. And so sometimes I think the only option I have is to offer compassion to myself,
mm,
regardless of how resilient I am. Right. And so I know we talk about self-compassion a lot as like a key to, really this healing work or growth or whatever we want to call it. And I think it's because it encourages us to, I guess, acknowledge our struggles, without judgment and especially when nobody else does, right?
right.
And I think it also gives us, permission to be imperfect, even if no one else does. And it allows us to acknowledge our limits, even if no one else does. And so for those of us, I think who do tend to be over resilient and maybe, need more gentleness, self-compassion reminds me to take a rest and to nurture
Mm,
myself and ensure that I have what I need because nobody else will, right? And so I always say, why is it so hard? And you kind of alluded to this earlier, but why is it so hard for me to treat myself with the same kindness and understanding that I would offer you, like, and so yeah, I think that's how I understand this I guess connection between self-compassion and being over resilient, I guess, and needing some gentleness. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you said it. Like, you're the one who can give it to yourself. Like, we can give it to our own selves, especially when no one else is giving it to us. And there's something that's so, for me, wholesome about that, because if I'm seeking for it externally, it's not saying I'm not deserving of receiving it and having those spaces held for me, absolutely. But it's not the same. Like, it's not the same as when I'm offering that rest and recharge to myself. I love you use the word rest. And knowing me and my pattern is like, give me all the work, let me feel good, let me feel good in this other way, let me ignore this other emotional experience that I'm having that I don't really like.
Mhm, mhm,
And so give me
mhm,
the things where I can feel good, I'll be productive, I'll check my list, I'll do it. Is such a knee-jerk coping skill for me, and I noticed myself in that this past week, and I'm like, you're doing it again. Okay, we are aware. Let's switch our focus. And so I took last Wednesday and gave myself a lot of space for feelings. Um a lot of space for feelings. And I don't know if anybody listening can relate to this, but I've had an interesting relationship with emotions. I either felt all of them to the most extreme degree, or I didn't feel them at all. So I like really oscillated, I think is the word, back and forth, and there was no middle ground where I was allowed to feel them and then move on with my day. So it was like I either identified with them, they were my whole existence, or not.
mhm,
And that's, I mean, that was, especially becoming a parent, something that I've put in a lot of intentional area of growth and, there. But yeah, it's just something that I talk about often, but like, learning to sit with uncomfortable emotions is such a skill that I don't know about others, but I wasn't taught it growing up, and that's no shame. That's just the era, of where
mhm,
where we were collectively, I think. And so when big emotions like what I've been feeling this past week, some pain, overwhelm, discomfort, have been rising for me, it's like I look to blame. It's like, okay, well, what have I done wrong, or what needs to change? And I find myself skirting around acceptance in any way that I can. And it's like, if I can just accept that this is here for me, then maybe I can move with it. But like, Anyway, just learning how. So two thoughts come to mind. Yeah, how do we learn to sit with uncomfortable feelings, and know that we can ride through them, with also honoring the balance that they don't need to become our whole reality.
Mm.
And so I'll give a clear example of what that looked like for me. Is Monday, Tuesday, I was work, 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 work. I was in the flow. I was laughing. I was noticing how disconnected I was starting to become. And I was starting to laugh at the things that were causing me a lot of pain. Another coping strategy of mine. And I was like, I don't think I'm doing super well here right now. And so on Wednesday, I woke up and there was no avoiding. I guess I could have. I guess I could have done other things to avoid. But I really wanted to sit with it, and so that meant giving myself space. I still did things, but once the emotions arose again, I just sat with them. And I know a lot of people, there's a lot of like info on this out there, but like an emotional wave only lasts 60 to 90 seconds and it passes through us. It doesn't, however, when we overly attach to it or when we push it away. And so learning how to sit in that intensity, that doesn't mean the wave's not going to come up for me again, but learning how to ride the waves for me and just giving myself gentleness as I do it too, like not shaming myself or looking for that blame of like, I'm feeling this way and it must be somebody's fault. So yeah, when I bring that up, Jess, I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts or does anything come up for you around the emotional experience and moving through difficult times?
Yeah, so I actually made a little note here on my sticky note because yeah, for people who are still learning more things about me, my memory is very I won't say my memory is short. I just have a lot of things in my brain. And so if I don't write them down, I will forget them and I try to stay committed to remembering things. But yeah, so I think I captured the questions, but I the first thing I guess I'll go back to just for a quick second was you mentioned about blame, right? And like trying to find the blame. And I think like as humans, that is our first instinct, right? Like if something doesn't go, like if something's not going the way we expect it, it's like, well, there has to be a reason. Like who here in this space can I blame, right? And often if there is nobody else around me, that's my first go-to is to kind of like who here can I blame for this? And also if there's no one else, it's like, okay, well, it has to be me, right? And so yeah, so I think I think there are probably lots of people that can relate to trying to find that blame. And so I guess when I think about like sitting with kind of those really uncomfortable emotions or yeah, emotions that we're not super excited to to be experiencing. The first thing I think that comes to mind for me is mapping out that emotion, like
Mm,
mapping out the emotions that feel uncomfortable. And so I think the easiest way I can do it is to relate to that feeling of loneliness. And yeah, again, all you listening, you're gonna hear me talk about that feeling a lot because it is the one that I know best. Um, but at one point that was, and sometimes still is, are such an uncomfortable emotion for me, right? And so before I could, I guess, work with it though, I needed to know what it was because I had no idea. I felt it, but I didn't know what to call it. I didn't know what it was all about. And so once I was able to pinpoint that this is the emotion I believe I'm experiencing, then followed the why, right? So why is that emotion A happening, but why is it so uncomfortable for me? And so now that I have the kind of the what and the why, I was able to create space for it and build a relationship with it.
mm,
And so I guess when that emotion is triggered for me now, um, I pay attention to maybe less about the emotion, but more to the thoughts or the story
mm,
that accompanies it, I think. And so what I find with that is when I allow it, like, and you talked about this too, like allow it to move through me, going through the emotion at my own pace. And sometimes that comes in different ways. Yeah, like, maybe an emotional release where I just, yeah, have to cry or
yeah.
yell or whatever. And Yeah, sometimes it comes through journaling or other things that maybe we'll talk about a little bit later of kind of how to move through, seasons. But um, I like to reframe it as information, or I'll reframe it from an emotion and process it as information then. So, um, like asking questions like, what's it trying to tell me?
Yeah.
What's it pointing to? And how do I meet the need that's going on, like beneath the surface, right? And then I think the next part you asked was around, I'll look at my note, around balancing that honoring the emotion, but then not letting it take over, right? Is that kind of
Yeah.
that? Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think this is a good question. This is a really good question. And so I think two things come to the top of my mind, I guess. And the first is setting boundaries with that emotion. And so for me, like that's part of having any relationship, right? And I believe in living with relation of many things in my life. And so I have a relationship with emotions. And so if am experiencing an emotion, whether that's like a really good, like feeling great, really like high emotion, which can also be and has been very damaging for me. But also those lower, more uncomfortable emotions, right? And trying to set boundaries with all of them. So I can say, like, yeah, you know what? I will let you feel it for 15 minutes. You have all this exciting stuff going on. You're doing a podcast and you got this new group you're doing, and and you got this fundraising thing coming up, and it's really good. And you can sit in that for like 15 minutes. And then you need to refocus on the tasks that you have to complete, though, right? And so I think that helps me honor that emotion of excitement. And yeah, this is so much to look forward to. And it also helps me create a space for other things that's going to help me restore the balance.
Mm.
And I also disengage with my emotions sometimes, like not in an avoidant way, but I do give myself permission to take a break. Like if my emotions are too overwhelming, um, yeah, I'll say like, take a reset and then we
Yeah.
can return and try to process it, right? So just like that's what I mean when I say relationship, when I think about having a relationship with my feelings. And so then I think the second thing about this balance, oh man, and this is really hard for me to do, but is to separate my emotion from my action. And boy, have I had to put in some hard work on this. Like
Mm.
and we still working on it over here. Like we are still working on it, like if I feel underappreciated, I don't have to immediately react with an outburst, right?
Right.
And so I can take a moment before I decide how I'm going to respond to this. And it kind of gives me some power to act intentionally versus acting impulsively, which has been learned through some really hard lessons for me. And yeah, still a work in progress, very much so. But yeah, I think taking time to choose a response
Yeah.
is more aligned with my values. And so I think that has been really key with trying to strike the balance of honoring and not losing control over or not losing power to my emotions, I guess. Yeah. I don't know if that captured the questions, but I think that was it.
So much wisdom. No, I'm over here just like soaking all of that in. And yeah, like the emotional mapping piece, like getting curious. I think, again, inviting curiosity into those emotional experiences for me is a game changer. It's like I go from judgment of like, oh my God, why are we feeling this? Like, what did I do? Like, into like, okay, hi friend. You're here, whether it's again for the 10th time today or whatever it might look like. But yeah, so that emotional mapping of the experience, and also you were kind of sharing, yeah, like you give yourself that permission, 15 minutes. Okay, I've got 15 minutes, or whatever the time increment looks like depending on your day. And I think that's kind of what I was saying when I schedule it. It's like, okay, I have like my kiddo went for a nap and we were just it was a really hard day. And so I was like, now's my time to go set off the release valve. Like I need to cry and I need to let this out and I need to reset through feeling the experience. But then also something else you talked about is like, yeah, sometimes if it's too much, you just put it away for now. And like I think that's a really important, especially as people, or as I was learning, I'll speak for myself, as I was learning how to regulate my emotional experiences, is yeah, giving myself like titrating. Something I always say is like learning how to dial up the discomfort of like being able to sit with it. So it's like, of course, I'm not going to go from not sitting with it at all to being able to be in the full experience. I mean, and if people listening, you can, good on you. I'm not saying that it's not possible. I just, for me, it was not.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, learning how, and so I always use this visualization to talk about one of the tools is like I would put it in a box and I had the shelf and it would all be very mapped out for me. And it's like, okay, I'm taking it. I have this pretty little chest. It's going in here for now. And I'm going to pull that. And it was like an intentional visualization. Okay, now I have time and space and I'm ready to pull that back off the shelf and take a look and ask those curious questions and give myself that space to process through. And I think that's important. And that helps honor us feeling more in control of ourselves, I feel, or it does for me anyway. I'll speak for myself. Um, but something that has been, I think, life-changing perspective for me is looking at things in a way instead of like, oh, this is bad, this is wrong, I don't want to be in this space. How is this for me? Because for a long time in my journey, I operated from a victim stance where poor me, this is all happening to me again. And, my life is shit. And, and of course I'm here again. And that victim mentality, and I'm confident we're going to get into that in another episode, but that did serve me in ways. It absolutely did. I had it for a reason. But in the same breath, it was exhausting. And I'm like, I kind of got tired of that narrative. And I'm like, this doesn't work for me. So shifting to how is this for me has really helped me move through difficult seasons. And I can already pinpoint, I've been journaling out a lot of the ways and things that I've learned and grown already through these past couple of months that have, been for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that helps me kind of hold on to my faith a little bit as well, to kind of talk about spirituality of like, if this is for me, okay, then this is teaching me something. I'm growing through this. And yeah. And so Jess, I'm wondering, we are winding down on time here, but I'm wondering if you have any perspectives or mindsets or some of these little tools that you have that help you move through the seasons or help you stay more connected to hope and faith.
Mm. Yeah, I think yeah, real quick, one of the things that you mentioned was the visualization, and I remember doing this it was called art, and I'd have to look at like the acronym what it stands for, but it's like accelerated something therapy, and I don't remember what it was, but it was exactly that. It was like a visualization exercise. And that was, yeah, working on that with my therapist was so like it was so useful and very helpful to kind of pinpoint a space of to visualize the space and then return to it. Um and I guess I'm just trying to think of some other, I guess, tools. I think yeah, I mentioned someone helped, carry the load. That's a magic kind
Yeah.
of thing for me for sure. Seeking the support. Healthier boundaries have also been a something that I've leaned into while establishing my own kind of reflective practice, I suppose. Journaling is another thing that I often find myself doing. Um, and creating as well, like you mentioned creativity. And so for me, it's through beading, and that's something that yeah, that's something that really helps navigate or helps me navigate through some challenging emotions or seasons or what have you. But you talked about a mindset shift, and you talked about that victim mentality. And so I think in reflecting on my own experience, yeah, I relate to that, and shifting from that victim mentality to more of an empowerment kind of mentality allowed me. I was thinking about this actually, like what was it? Like what is it about the mindset shift that worked? And I think it was it allowed me to focus on what I can control.
Hmm.
And to be honest, I have a lot of control over things in my life. And so a mentor of mine says that, life is a small percentage of circumstance, so a small percentage of the things that happen to us. And it's more largely about how we react to them that makes all of the difference. And so I think changing, that perspective of I just have to accept this, and really stepping into my power has been key. And I think I just really also want to say here too, like it's so easy to say, right?
Yes.
Like, oh, you just need to step into your power. And it isn't simple. There's no guidebook on how to do it. So I don't mean for it to sound yeah, this is just what you have to do, like it's so easy. But I would say that, yeah, taking accountability for my actions and taking accountability for my own life circumstance really was a mindset shift that I needed, and I think does help in the messy, uncomfortable seasons of life, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said and good reminder. No, like easy to say. Lots of things are easy to say and to intellectualize, but to
Mhm.
have it in action and to be embodied as something that we use and move through like that, that's more work.
Mhm.
um, yeah, and not to be discouraged, like for if you're listening and you're going through a hard season and you are in any of the spaces of victimhood or not able to regulate emotionally, like no shame. It's these are seasons that really can be testing and trying and yeah, and I just want to come back to for me having I I really lean on support and sometimes it's a matter of remembering to lean in on myself first and then in on the support. But yeah, having support, I think, and remembering that we deserve it. I know I said that earlier, but I want to say it again. Like remembering that we deserve it, even if there's a voice or something telling us that we don't. Yeah, we deserve to be held in those spaces. So with that, we're winding down here. Jess, I just want to thank you so much for all the wisdom that you shared here today. There was so much goodness in what you shared, and I hope you listening have found something to take with you today. And yeah, so until next time, stay soulful, everybody. Thanks for tuning into Soulfull. We hope you found something meaningful to carry with you on your journey. And if you enjoyed today's episode and want to show your support, we invite you to subscribe, share the podcast, and leave a review wherever you listen.
And if you're eager for more, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Soulfull the Podcast for additional content and updates. Until next time, stay soulful.